As a kid, I really loved to grow sunflowers. Right? They're a really huge plant, gigantic flower, and as a small kid looking up at this gigantic plant, it was really a sight to behold. As I've gotten older, I've grown some sunflowers from time to time, but never really devoted a whole lot of attention to them, and never really had that great of a yield. Whether it be molding flower heads and seeds that were, improperly dried, or pest damage, or drought, or just not great soils for them, whatever the case may be. But this year I have renewed interest in growing these sunflowers because they can be such an oil and protein rich crop. So in this video I'm going to be discussing sunflowers, how they can be grown, some different types of pests, and some potential predators that may go after those pests. So sunflowers are a super popular plant in home gardening and in different flower arrangements as well. A lot of people like to go out to a sunflower field and get their picture taken. Sunflowers are also really popular for a lot of people who are very interested in birds, whether that be someone who has a bird feeder who puts in sunflower seeds, of course, or people who grow sunflowers to attract various types of birds. Sunflowers can also be grown for their oil content, right? Certain varieties of sunflowers produce either a high linoleic acid content or a high oleic acid content. And so these seeds can be grown, harvested, and pressed for their oil, which can then be used for food or for other uses like making soap. This crop is actually native to North America. So as I mentioned, we have different types of sunflowers, right? We have certain varieties that are bred for their oil content, like the Terra-ble, which is an old Russian variety. Then we also have the seed type or the confectionery type. And so this is grown for the seeds, whether those seeds are grown for snacking or some type of more direct human consumption. So we have some basic things that we want to keep in mind regarding the growth of sunflowers. So of course, as referenced by the name and how these sunflowers look, these plants require full sun. And the flower heads will actually follow the course of the sun throughout the day. Soil pH can be another important factor as well. Usually we look between 6.0 and 7.0, right? So fairly close to neutral pH, and we want that soil to be loose and well drained. The sunflower doesn't like to get its feet wet too much, and it also sends out rooting structures that can go pretty deep down into the soil. Also, sunflowers in and of themselves can help to aerate the soil as well along with that, and help to reduce compaction. So we want to have soil that's got a reasonable amount of organic matter in there. That'll help with the looseness of the soil, and it will also help with the water holding capacity. It's important for the soil to be able to hold water so that in times of drought, that water supply in the soil can be stretched out over a longer time and be more plant available. Typically we want to plant sunflowers when the soil temperature gets to about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So we don't want to plant it too early. It's not going to be one of the first plants that we sow, but we also don't want to plant it too late because then soil temperatures can warm up even more. And also the sunflowers need a pretty good length of season to be able to produce effectively. In some places, depending on your context, where you live, what type of climate, it may be helpful to start sunflowers indoors, but the rest of us can direct seed these sunflowers into the growing space. So this crop produces large leaves and large flowers, right, on tall stalks. So this plant can be fairly subject to the prevailing wind. So we want to plant it in appropriate places accordingly, maybe in some area where these plants will get a little bit of a buffer or sheltering effect from the prevailing wind, especially if conditions are really windy in your context. And so this can help to mitigate the risk of lodging or crop loss, stem breakage, things of that nature. In some cases, staking may also be beneficial for keeping these sunflower plants upright. Of course, when we plant the sunflower seeds, we want to be mindful of that sunflower seeds can be eaten by various birds or various mammals. And so when we plant them, it's important for them to get water and moisture right away to to encourage that rooting process and that plant establishment from the seeds to occur as quickly as possible. It also may be helpful, I wonder, to put some type of little cover, like maybe a rock or a board or something like that, on top of the soil, on top of these planted seeds after they've been watered for the first few days or so, right, before the plants begin to sprout. And this might help to keep the seeds in the soil and maybe prevent some birds from trying to eat them before they sprout. So I think that's probably going to be one thing that I try this year. Another important aspect to consider is boron, right? It's a micronutrient that doesn't necessarily get a whole lot of attention, but deficiencies can cause some challenges, especially with regard to the sunflower. Sometimes we can have malformed heads, weird shaped flower structures that don't have that even and smooth round flower shape. Sometimes there can be an uneven look to them, and crease and ridge lines that may warp that shape of that overall flower. And then additionally, some seeds may fail to set. We may have like patches on the sunflower as these seeds are maturing, where a bunch of seeds don't actually fill out and don't actually mature. And so these can be two common symptoms that could potentially relate to boron deficiency challenges. So sometimes what I do is I'll take some household borax with no other additives to it, just the sodium tetraborate or whatever it is, and I'll dilute that in water, and I will spray that on certain crops, right, that may be particularly prone to boron deficiencies, or they may benefit from a boron application, such as different species of melons that I grow, and as well as these sunflowers. And then we also can look at certain pests that can be challenges for the sunflower, right? And this list is kind of fairly extensive, and there's probably even more than what's listed here, right? But we have the pantry moth. Pantry moth, of course, is a generalist predator. It can go after a whole bunch of different foods. And the sunflower seed is just one more example. Birds can also be a challenge because they can go after the seeds, but they can also be an immense ally, as I mentioned down here, where they can be good predators of different insect pests. And then we also have the sunflower moth, the sunflower weevil, the sunflower stem weevil, banded sunflower moth, sunflower bud moth, and the sunflower beetle, right? And the sunflower beetle looks a lot similar to the Colorado potato beetle, and so one could easily be mistaken for the other. So definitely make sure you know what species you have. Next, we have different predators. We have bats that can go after a bunch of different insects and moths. Birds, of course, I already mentioned, they can go after various insect pests. And then we also have some tachinid flies and different types of parasitoid wasps. And some of these can go after the sunflower beetle or the sunflower moth and some of these other insects as well. Certain predator species are going to be host specific, others are going to be more generalist in terms of what they consume. And then we also have lacewings, ladybugs, damselbugs, or the navid bugs, carabid beetles, predatory stink bugs, and the stiletto fly. And the stiletto fly is also referred to as a type of robber fly as well. And so a lot of these predators, these beneficials, can go after some of these pests. Thank you so much for checking out this video on the sunflower. I'm really looking forward to growing this crop in the garden this year, and I'll be interested to see how this plant fits into the gardenscape, right, and what kinds of like predator and pest interactions this has with some of the insect life, and what types of birds it may attract, and also what kind of food value I can get from growing these sunflowers. So thank you so much for checking out this video. I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.